hazard pay finally gets the push it needs as leading Democrats and state representatives slam the Republicans for not including it in a second stimulus package. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Afternoons LALATE. Thanks for joining me for our 2-hour programming block about the stimulus. We started with the check. This is about hazard pay. Coming up next, FPUC, and then rent assistance. But big, exciting, great news about hazard pay, which had become the ghost of the second stimulus package with no one talking about it. It's as though everyone forgot about it and didn't care. And then came this. Overnight, vast majorities of individuals in leading positions both in Congress and in state levels came out and slammed the Republicans for doing nothing for essential workers. And now the discussion that I had urged and hoped that we would get is happening. Here's the latest news. Hazard pay was proposed by the Democrats in the HEROES Act, $10,000 up to $10,000 for essential workers. But when the Republicans proposed their second stimulus package on Monday, no mention of hazard pay. Throughout the entire week, whether it's the White House, whether it's Donald Trump, Steve Mnuchin, and Larry Kudlow, or it's Mark Meadows, not one person has ever said those two words, hazard pay. So it's not like it was omitted and forgotten, or that it's somewhere there and it's not there. There's only been one leading Republican who has mentioned hazard pay since May, since the very beginning, and that is Mitt Romney, who has an absolutely exceptional bill written by the senator from Utah. But the Republicans who wrote the HEROES Act don't have it in there. What was the reaction? I know your reaction. I know my reaction. I read the comments. Now, big news. This is a middle finger to those who are struggling and to the cops, first responders, teachers, and that those who have been putting their lives on the line in the fight against COVID-19. Tweeted Representative Max Rose, a Democrat from New York, adding that the proposed plan from the Republicans includes $0 for cities and states, no hazard pay, and slashed unemployment benefits. He calls it the biggest slap in the face of American citizens in modern day history. What they're saying to essential workers is, you have to go to work because you're essential. We've placed no responsibilities on your employer to make that workplace safe. And who said that? Nancy Pelosi overnight. She's now saying that the lack of attention to the safety and the payment and the security of essential workers going forward is so repugnant from Republicans that she thinks it's not going to fly. And this is really the great news, that the vast majority of Americans did work as essential workers during this pandemic. If you were working at any time during this pandemic, even part-time or full-time, you probably were essential workers or somewhere in the confines of what likely would qualify as essential workers. There's tens of millions of people who work at Walmart, Costco, and Home Depot, CVS, Walgreens. There's a lot of people who are shippers and drivers and Uber and Lyft drivers and truck drivers. There's tons and tons of people who work in grocery stores, who work in medical facilities like an assistant to a doctor or nurse. These are tens of millions, if not billions, of U.S. citizens who are all qualified to get hazard pay as essential workers. This isn't some small group of 20 people. It's a lot of people. And the Republicans don't even acknowledge your contribution to the pandemic, let alone acknowledge your existence. What makes it even worse, and that's what Nancy Pelosi is referring to, is what the Republicans did propose in contrary to you, in defiance to you, that the Republicans' HEALS plan proposed that you are ordered back to work, and if the workplace is unsafe, tough luck, you can't sue your employer unless they intentionally made it unsafe. Yes. It's that double whammy that is really finally hitting broadcast news. I've been detailing it since Monday. You have been commenting incredible remarks about how you think this is absolutely disgusting that you're not being compensated for and protected going forward. But now everyone is coming to fruition. And if you're sick and you have no recourse because you weren't given the employers protection, and if you don't go to work, you're afraid of getting sick, and you have the job opportunity, you don't get the employment insurance, that's so unfair. I forgot that as well. So let's say you are afraid to go in work, or you get sick at work. Guess what? You stay at home, and then you don't get unemployment benefits from the Republicans as well. Vermont Bernie Sanders had a field day on this overnight. He said it's a disaster plan, writing a tweet that the bill provides $29.4 million for the Pentagon, but $0 for hazard pay. Thank God. This is the best news that I have heard this week. We as a group have been asking for those major congressional leaders to not forget essential workers, to talk about it, to put it on the front line of broadcast news, which unfortunately have not represented you as well. Reporters across the nation have not talked about hazard pay. They consistently talk about unemployment benefits and sometimes rent assistance, but they just don't talk about hazard pay. Now it's coming to front page. This is an article from Newsday, by the way. During an interview with MSNBC, he said, Bernie Sanders said it's a disgrace. Sanders then emailed Newsweek an additional statement. Says workers on farms, in grocery stores, in hospitals, in meatpacking plants across this country have been risking their lives for low pay to keep this country running. Amen. We must give them more than lip service. They deserve hazard pay, sick leave, health care, and safe workplaces. Couldn't be said any better. New York State Senator, this is a state senator, so this is not a senator in Congress, but a state senator, Andrew Cornades repeated the same and said it's absolutely disgraceful. He tweeted Monday that Americans believed better than an aid package that cuts unemployment benefits and does not include hazard pay. It's so much worse by the slow, stingy, and even cruel response by the Republican senators. Cruel. It's very well said to call the HEALS Act as to hazard pay and essential workers cruel. It is cruel. And, I try to stay positive and stay motivating, and say you keep you focused. But sometimes I really have to call it like it is. And it's a hot damn mess. It's a disgrace. It's a human disgrace. I find it so rich that Republicans like to wrap themselves in the flag and beat their chests, and we support our first responders, we support our teachers, we support our nurses. And then when the time comes to pay them and protect their jobs, they absolutely are nowhere to be found. I love that. You want to talk about helping people? Well, how about helping them the correct way? The Republicans keep on saying they're trying to put aside stonewalling and rediscover the sense of urgency, but Senate Republicans have offered another bold framework to help our nation. So now our Democratic colleagues need to reprise their work as well, says Mitch McConnell. Where are we on this? Well, where we are is really a better position as of Monday. If you haven't caught all my videos, and boy, there's been a lot of discussions, a lot of switches and turns, the situation currently now is really not a two-bill environment anymore. If you watch the earlier video on Afternoons with LALATE where I talked about the check, I talked about yet another bill being introduced. What's going on is that Republicans and Democrats are not agreeing. They're just not agreeing. More Republicans are not agreeing with other Republicans than Democrats with Democrats. And so suddenly what we started this week is two bills. HEALS and HEROES, and some viewers desperately concerned that HEALS did not have hazard pay. You have all these other Republicans walking in with brand new bills just today and saying, hey, my colleague, they're not doing enough. I wrote another bill. This bill tries to fix what they didn't do. So we have a lot of people trying to fix things. And so the good news is that everything is really on the table, that the Democrats are absolutely behind you for hazard pay, that there is still a push, and I've seen no movement on this, and I think this is really, really great news. No movement by the Democrats to piecemeal. They have absolutely said they will not piecemeal a second stimulus package, which has hazard pay in there, because they say the Republicans are trying to do that, so they leave the core parts alone and never pass them. If you don't recall what happened on Evenings LALATE last night, I revealed that Mitch McConnell, who hasn't done much of anything but cause a lot of problems this time around, said that he wanted separate emergency bills right now. And I asked you on Mornings LALATE, did you agree with that? He said, let's do emergency, 2 emergency, or 3 emergency bills right now and not get to the actual package which needs to be approved. And you said, no, I don't agree with it. Let's get the entire package that needs to be done approved. Ultimately, as Mitch tries to interrupt this recording as well. So the great news is that hazard pay is absolutely still on the table. $10,000 if you worked in the pandemic, either part-time, full-time, or partial. It's calculated $13 an hour based upon the number of hours you worked. Includes overtime, part-time, full-time, any time of work. It's based upon the amount of money you made last year as essential worker. So if you made $100,000 or less, you qualify up to $10,000 in hazard pay. If you made over $100,000 last year, you would qualify for $5,000 of hazard pay. The calculation would give you that lump sum right away. And if you aren't at that threshold already, you would get a lump sum for where you are and then $13 going forward. Hazard pay also gives you protections, which I don't really talk about so much on this channel. Hazard pay has workplace protections to ensure your workplace is safe. Hazard pay would be administered by the federal government. You would not apply, but rather your employer would apply and then pay you the money. The bad parts of the hazard pay bill I've detailed are the employer does not have to apply for you. They are not required to apply for you, and if they don't apply for you, you have no recourse. Mitt Romney's bill is better drafted and more thoughtful because he requires the employer to apply for you, and then has the federal government pay the employer for applying for you to ensure the process is done and people get their money. Ultimately, as we sit here on Friday, as COVID-19 cases increase across the country, as hotbeds are identified in Florida, Texas, California, as COVID-19 cases go through the roof, people are still working on the front lines. Workplaces are still not safe. People are not being compensated for hazard pay by their employers. Unions are starting to step up the heat. They're saying that grocery stores, which had paid hazard pay back in May, are not paying it this time around. Whereas employers are starting to say, I'm not paying hazard pay because I'm not making enough money to pay you hazard pay. Employers are starting to not even use the word hazard pay and call it just bonus and say, well, we only pay bonus when there's a surge of people, and there's not a surge of people. Ultimately, the message is getting lost by a lot of people, the employers, the Republicans, and the corporate heads. The people who are fighting for you are the unions and the Democrats and the reporters who keep this a frontline story. If you have questions in today's video, drop them in the comments below. Boy, thanks for joining me this morning on Mornings LALATE. Big, well-watched show. Our second most watched video ever. We're doing about 1 million views every 48 hours, so I really appreciate your patronage. Please subscribe to this channel if you've not. Hit the bell at the front of this channel so you get an alert when a new video goes live. Like and share our videos. Afternoons with LALATE is a 2-hour programming block of 4 videos. Every 30 minutes is a new video. It starts with a check, then hazard pay, then unemployment assistance, and then rent assistance. Coming up later tonight is Evenings LALATE, a 1-hour programming block that has the check, questions and answers answered for you, and then EIDL grants and loans. As always, stay informed, stay educated, stay motivated, and stay positive, please. As we head into the weekend, you've made it to the weekend. Stay with LALATE for more.